Hello everyone, and welcome to our third live chat in a frame of Multicomfort Student Contest edition 2020, which will be held in Paris. Before we start with the actual topic, I would like to guide you through a little of technicalities. So what you are having here is the screen and the vertical bar, which you can use to resize the screen and see either the video in a bigger format or the presentation in the bigger format. What you also need to do is to pay attention to the bottom left-hand corner, where you can see the Q&A button. During the live chat, you would be able to post your questions, which we will try to answer at the end of this live chat. So, introducing ourselves, my name is Sławomir Szpunar, and I'm responsible for the Multicomfort concept in Saint-Gobain, and I have a pleasure to introduce to you Valerie Goletto, who is part of our research and development department, and the indoor air quality transversal program in this department. So, Valerie, the stage is yours. Please continue.
Thank you, Sławomir. Good morning or good afternoon to all of you. So I have around 30 minutes to give you an introduction about indoor air quality. And as Sławomir was saying, we have time for questions at the end of the presentation. So the objective for me today is really to give you some generic information about indoor air quality and why it matters in building and why it matters in the project that you will work on. So just a few background introductions. So air is vital for the human being. As you know, we can only stay a few minutes without breathing. So that means we breathe, inhale and exhale air 100% of our times. And per day, this represents a high volume of air that goes through our body and is exchanged. And what is important also to know is that as a human being, we have no physiological sensor inside our body that can give you some information about the quality of the air we are breathing. So we don't have any warning when the air we breathe is not as good as it should be. So keep in mind that compared to temperature or acoustic noise, we cannot say, okay, I can see now that I can feel I'm too cold or I'm too hot or the sound is too loud. So this is the main difference. And I want also to point on the fact that we are going to focus on indoor air because we spend today, in the way we are living, most of our time in indoor environments, either at home, at school, at work, or in different places. And when we look at the air composition, the mean air composition, the air that we are breathing every day, you can see that most of it are nitrogen and oxygens. But in fact, a very, very small part of this composition here will make the big difference. Un problème avec l'animation. Ah oui, yes, sorry. Will make the big difference, meaning that this is what is contained in these small fractions that will make the difference between a good air and a bad air. And I will come back to it in a moment. So as I was saying, we spend most of our time in indoor environments. So let's focus on indoor air. The first question I will ask you, to your opinion, is indoor air more polluted or less polluted than outdoor air? So let's have a look. Oops, it's too fast. So in fact, we can hear a lot in the media about outdoor air pollution, fine particulate, ozones, and so on. But the truth is that indoor air is more polluted than outdoor air for most of the time, and it can be up to 10 times more polluted. So as we spend most of our time in indoor environments, this is really what can have a big impact on us. Another information is that the indoor pollutants that we can find are of very various natures. I will come back to this in a few moments, but we classify them in three main categories. We speak about chemical pollutants, physical pollutants, and microbiological pollutants. And all those different pollutants are coming from different sources, from indoor. For example, they can come from the building materials which were used to build the place you are in, the furniture which is in the room you are in, as well as the occupants. As I was saying, we are breathing a lot of air, so we are inhaling oxygen, releasing carbon dioxide, as well as the activity we do in the indoor environment. Like if we are cooking, if we are cleaning, if we are retrofitting. And finally, we can have also the impact of outdoor air coming inside, which can contribute to the global indoor air pollution. So let's come back to this various nature of pollutants just to give you some more detailed information of the type of pollutants that we can have inside. So as I said, we have chemical, physical, and biological pollutants. I give here some examples of compounds that correspond to each of these categories so that you can be aware of the most common ones. So chemical pollutants, for example, we have carbon monoxide, that's coming most of the time from heating system, carbon dioxide, which is coming from the air we exhale, nitrogen oxide, which can also come from heating systems. And then we have a long list of other chemical compounds that we classify generally under the name of volatile organic compounds, VOCs, and which regroups a large number of different molecules of different chemical origins. And just to name a few ones which are very typical of indoor air and that you will find a lot in indoor air. So we have formaldehyde that you will find in 100% of the indoor air. So formaldehyde is one of the volatile organic compounds. It's even called as a very volatile, meaning that in the air it will evaporate very fast at room temperature. We have then a full list of other molecules, volatiles, like benzene, toluene, acetone, acetaldehyde, and other categories called semi-volatiles, which are typically some compounds that are put into products and materials to make them fire resistant, like organophosphates, or to make them or superplasticizer, like phthalates. As for physical compounds, just a few examples of the ones that you find typically in indoor environment. We have fine particulates. So the same way we have fine particles outdoor, we have some fine particles indoor coming from the activity. So we speak about, generally the wording for these particulates is the PM for particulate matter. So PM 2.5 and PM 10. The number refers to the size, the diameter of this particulate. So PM 2.5 consider particles which has a diameter below 2.5 micron and PM 10 below 10 microns. Another type of physical pollutants are fibers like asbestos. And another type of physical pollutant is a gas, the radon, which is a radioactive gas. And finally, in the category of biological pollutants, this regroups a large different types of microbiological organisms like fungi, bacteria, viruses, pollen, endotoxin, and allergens. So this is just few more details about the compounds that makes those indoor pollutants. So why do we care about these pollutants and the air composition? As I said, we spend a lot of time indoor, and so we are submitted for a lot of time to those chemical compounds, physical compounds, and biological compounds. And this is shown, and there are some articles in the State of the Art that study the impact of this air under the occupants. And typically we speak about the sick building syndrome that relates the impact of those pollutants on the occupants. So typically we will have some impact on the comfort that the occupant will perceive, and it can even goes up to the impact on the occupant's health, and both categories of impact will at the end impact the overall performance of the person inside the buildings. So one thing I want to stress on is that as for Saint-Gobain, what we will like to promote and what we promote is the impact, is the comfort of the occupants. And what we say is that by using some categories of product and system, this will promote the comfort. We won't say that this will promote your health. We don't trigger the health impact of the product, which can be tricky. So as for the impact on the global impact of of them on the performance of occupants, in fact, I gave you a few examples that definitely demonstrates that indoor air quality can have a real impact on occupants' performance. So I take this first example of children at schools because in fact it's known that if you have a 2 level of CO2 in a school, the pupils will have more difficulties to concentrate and their capacity to learn will be affected. And these are coming from scientific studies. Another example of the well-known impact of indoor air quality on occupants is the impact of carbon dioxide. As I say, we are breathing a lot. And so if you take a room with several persons inside, with time, the level of CO2 that is exhaled will accumulate, and it will make the CO2 level increase in the room. And at some level, it will cause some impact on the comfort of persons, and typically their ability to concentrate and to focus will be reduced. So this is another clear example which has been studied in scientific literature of the impact of IOQ comfort on people performance. So I give you here a link where we will find those illustrations as well as additional ones, all related to the link between indoor air comfort and people performance. And in fact, in the scientific community, there are a lot of ongoing scientific studies that are studying not only the impact of indoor air quality comfort, but also studying the multiple impact of the different comfort altogether on the global performance of people. Just coming back also to the difference between comfort and health. I said to you that the pollutants that are composing the air we breathe can have both types of impact. So what is the main difference? Health impact means that you will be sick if you are submitted to this level. Comfort means you are going to be uncomfortable but not sick. So I will try to illustrate in this graph with a few categories of type of indoor pollutants the difference between comfort and health. The main idea is that showing that I don't want to scare you too much when we talk about indoor air quality. We have seen there are a lot of pollutants, but not all of them are dangerous. So let's consider this axis, which will represent the concentration of those different pollutants indoor. And you will see some different colors showing different levels. So let's take a look with the first example. This is to represent the CO2. So the CO2 we generate when we breathe. So the blue cross represents the threshold at which, the level at which we as individual, we will perceive there is some change in the environment and we start to have a different feeling. So you see, if we are below this threshold, everything is okay, we feel okay, no problem. If we are above this threshold, we have two situations. First level, in the black range, it's a concentration which is coming to get high, but it's still okay for our health. That means that we will feel uncomfortable. We will feel like having some difficulties to concentrate, maybe have some headaches and so on. But this is well below the level at which it starts to be dangerous for our health. Let's take a look at another type of pollutants. Like, as I said before, in the indoor, we find a lot of formaldehyde. Formaldehyde, which is a pollutant typical of indoor air. And in fact, it's very important to have this in mind because formaldehyde is a pollutant that you find in 100% of the indoor living space. So you see that our level of perception is too late compared to the concentration at which it starts to be dangerous for our health. That's why it's very important to have an idea of how much concentration we have indoor, because if you will rely on the human being, he won't be able to tell you, oh, I don't feel well. It will be too late when he doesn't feel well. And with the same idea, if I take another type of pollutants like radon, we don't even feel it, never. And it's the same for carbon monoxide. So that's why people get intoxicated by carbon monoxide, because we have no perception threshold. So we can't do nothing. And finally, on the opposite, we have some very low threshold for odorous compounds. I take the example of a fish which smells very strong. We feel very quickly that it's uncomfortable to us, but it's far below concentration at which it could become very dangerous for our health. So the main message I want to pass here is that we have a lot of compounds that are composing the indoor pollutants, but not all of them are dangerous for our health. So it's important to know which are the ones to focus on, and formaldehyde is one of them. And we have seen that before being dangerous, they can promote uncomfort, and that's why it's important to differentiate the comfort impact and the health impact. So then, as I was saying, we don't have any physiological sensor to measure in the human body the indoor air quality. So then, how can we measure it actually? So, in fact, just before I describe the methods, just to give you an idea of the level we need to measure actually. In fact, just to have, so that you have in mind that the level of pollutants that we need to measure are very low level. We speak about ppb level or microgram per cubic meter. I give you some example of conversion rate in between the two units. For most of the pollutants, we will speak about a few microgram or a few tenths of microgram per cubic meter. For CO2, which is different, the indoor concentration is at a ppm scale, and I give you the conversion rate between the ppm and the ppb. And finally, for radioactive compounds like radon, it's a totally different unit. But I will focus on the main pollutants, the largest category of pollutants, which are the chemical pollutants. So if we look at the methods that exist to measure them, so there exist some standardized methods, which are well-known and reliable methods, which can allow to identify and quantify the different compounds present with a high level of accuracy. The main drawback of these methods are that they are expensive and that they require an expert to be there and a lab with a dedicated equipment to measure them. But those methods exist. And there are also some new methods arriving on the market which are more friendly from a user point of view because you don't need to be an expert. It's very simple. You remove one step from the total analysis. But be cautious because the main message here is that those equipments are new. Some of them are low cost, but a few of them are indeed reliable. That's why we rely mostly on the standardized method for indoor air quality measurement. And when we want to characterize products to know what is their impact on indoor air quality, So we use these analysis methods combined with some dedicated equipment in which we put the products to study the impact of the product. The impact can be either to measure what level of pollutants the product will emit, or if the pollutant has some claimed performance to depollute, how effective it is in the depollution. So all those tests are done in dedicated equipment according to standardized method. Typically, we put the sample in a very controlled clean air, if we want to study the emission of the product, in a very controlled temperature, humidity for a given number of days, and we study the emission of the products. I speed up a little bit so that we keep time for questions. So then, okay, we have seen that we spend a lot of time in indoor air. It's difficult for the human body to be able to say I'm breathing a good air, a bad air, but it's important to know it because it can have an impact on our performance. And then, so what can we do if we are living in an environment where we may have some indoor air issue? We can do something. And so there are three different ways to do something and to play and to improve your indoor air quality. The first one is to remove as much as possible the number of pollution sources. The second one is to, if you have a source, to dilute it as much as possible and as quick as possible using the ventilation system of the room. And third route, you could add some equipment or some products which have some purification abilities. So let's have a look in each of those categories. So as for removing pollution source, I took the example of France because in the case of the contest, the project is localized in France. So to help the customer to select the most appropriate building materials, in France there is a label which is a mandatory label to be put on any construction and decorative materials. So it dates back 2011. And these labels will give you a letter from A+ to C. And this letter refers to the level of emission of pollutant emission of the products. So typically this concerns all the building materials that can either go to floor, wall, ceiling, partition in a building. So I give you also the link where you have more information about this labeling. So how this this ranking is given. In fact, if you want to determine exactly if your product falls in the category of A+ or C or B, in fact, what you will do, you will measure the emission of your product in a very controlled chamber, as I described before, in very controlled condition. And you will follow the different pollutants that are emitted by your product up to 28 days. And after 28 days, you will compare the value that you got for each of those individual components to those thresholds. And if for all of them, for example, the concentration you measure are below those values, you can say that your product is A+. So this is the way it is determined. So this is one way to make sure that you don't have too much source in your building. Then, as I mentioned, the second way is to dilute, if you have any source, to dilute it as good as you can and as fast as you can. And typically, the best way to do that is to renew the air in your room. So that means to ventilate your room and your building. So before, it was not a real problem because in the past, we have buildings which have a lot of holes in the walls, and these holes were promoting the free air circulation, creating what we call natural ventilation. But recently, with new thermal regulation, which targeting to promote higher building efficiency, to reduce energy consumption, as a result, we create what we call the airtight building, or maison thermos in French, which as a result, if you want to promote the ventilation, you have to put a ventilation system, mechanical ventilation system. And so we are currently, in fact, moving to another thermal regulation, so which I guess will still increase the requirement in terms of energy efficiency, and for which it will be even more important to have a good ventilation of the building. So ventilation is key, and if it's well dimensioned and well maintained, this will enable you to dilute any pollution source and to avoid any air pollution issue. And finally, if you still want to improve the air quality of your indoor, you can add some equipment, some devices that will purify the air. So typically in ventilation system, part of the air can come from the outdoor. And so before it's coming inside, you can have some filtration system that will clean the outdoor air before it's come inside. The second type of equipment is that you bring yourself an additional air purifying system, so that you put in one room, for example. The drawback is that it requires some energy, most of the time electricity, and so it will consume energy. And finally, the third way is to put inside your place depolluting building materials. And as Saint-Gobain, in fact, we are proposing solutions and products and solutions that are actually targeting the different aspects that I just mentioned, how to low emission, depolluting product, and some ventilation solution. So you have some few examples here that are illustrated, and so don't hesitate if you have questions. So just a few slides before I finish about how indoor air quality is to be considered when you build new buildings, in the case of the projects, for example. In fact, when we look at new buildings, they are most of the time certified according to well-known and well-recognized labels, what we call generally the green building labels. So I have a few named here. So the labels can differ in different ways. Some of them have a national scope, some of them have a more international scope. For example, HQE label is French one, LEED is an American one or international one. Then the label can address either new and retrofitted buildings, and buildings that can have different applications, either commercial building or residential building. And in fact, if we look at those labels, what about IAQ criteria in those labels? So indeed, most of them consider IAQ as a potential way to get credits to get through the label, and so the higher number of credits you get, the higher level of certification you will reach. But it's difficult because the criteria to get those credits may differ from one label to another. So it can be very confusing sometimes. And I've just here put the reference of a paper where they have done this work to compare and to extract from most of existing labels what are the IAQ criteria. And just to give you an example, in most of those labels, the CO2 is considered as a way to get credits, and typically you will have some concentration limitation of the CO2 to have indoor to get some good credits. And then we have other credits linked to other indoor air pollutants. And once again, from label to label, it can differ. So either we have a list of pollutants or just one global indicator representative of the pollutants. So I encourage you to look at the labels that concern France, for example. And what about Saint-Gobain regarding the criteria that Saint-Gobain we promote for comfort, for indoor air quality comfort? So for us, the only criteria we consider first is the CO2 concentration, and we give some range below and for each range of concentration, it corresponds to a level of comfort. So CO2 is considered as a stuffiness indicator. So typically, if you have a low CO2 concentration, that means that your air is sufficiently renewed, so the ventilation system works quite well, and so you should avoid a big issue with pollutants. As for other pollutants, we don't get any range of concentration. We encourage you to look at the recommendations that are associated in the local labels or regulation to know which range to consider. So as a conclusion, the main message I hope I was able to pass on you during this presentation, and that you have to keep in mind, is that indoor air quality is as important, if not even more, as outdoor air quality. That indoor air pollutants are various nature, multiple origins. Some of them, like formaldehyde, are found everywhere in 100% of the environment. They are specific to indoor. Indoor air quality has impact on both occupants' comfort and health, but we have seen the differences in between the two notions. And this can in fact have an impact on people's performance. We have seen also that it's possible to measure with a high level of accuracy and the indoor air quality, so really to know what are the components present in the indoor air. And I have shown you that some easy and funny low-cost solutions exist, but be careful with them because they are not really fully reliable. I have shown you also that don't be afraid of indoor air. Not all the components are dangerous, and we can in any case we can be an actor that contributes to improve indoor air through the ventilation, by the choice of the building materials, the furniture we put inside, and also by the activities that we have inside, like cleaning, cooking, or smoking. So as for Saint-Gobain, indoor air quality comfort is one of the strategic pillars of the global Saint-Gobain multi-comfort approach, and I've illustrated some of the solutions that we develop, produce, and commercialize, and that contribute to the IAQ comfort in buildings. So I thank you for your attention, and I think we will take some time for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Valerie. And indeed, let's have a look if any questions were posted. We have a couple of them. So let's start with the first one. Is the quality of the air changing between a very old building and the new building? And I think that if we are speaking about the retrofit question, very often it is the case. As Valerie has explained, one of the first elements that we often do to renovate the building is really to avoid all the leaks and to make the building envelope much more airtight. One has to remember that each time we are doing this, we need to provide appropriate amount of air incoming to the buildings and the way to evacuate it. So provide the in and out intake and exhaust for the air to maintain the good indoor air quality. On the same front, what we could have very often in the old building is the accumulation of the bad situation related to biological pollutants or some other pollutants. So it is also very often a way to get rid of this one pollutants that are already there and simply clean the environment to have a better conditions. Let's take a look at the second question, which is what is the best way to reach the high indoor air quality? And I think that was the last part of Valerie's presentation, where she was speaking about these three steps, if I may say so. So first one is to avoid the source of pollution. So making sure that if we are using the building materials, they are classified as A+. If you are using the cleaning materials or the furniture and so on, they have the highest possible classification. So we are not bringing the bad things into the indoor environment. The second part is obviously ventilate and make sure that we have the possibility to have enough exchanges of air per inhabitants, per people using the building, simply to make sure that we keep this concentration, especially of the CO2, on the good level. And last but not least, it's obviously the question of purifying the air. So once we have these conditions, when we have the ventilation system, well, the good thing to have is to have the filters on it, and to avoid bringing the outdoor pollution indoor. And what is also the good thing to have is to consider, especially in the buildings like schools, for example, or hospitals, to have these products, this source of products that are actively cleaning the air. So products like the Active Air, for example, that are scavenging the indoor air and we may say absorb some of the volatile organic compounds. We have the third question. Are, for example, schools needing a different type of ventilation from offices, or there a general French regulation for all types of buildings? I'm speaking under the surveillance of Valerie, but usually the regulations are treating in a different way the residential building and non-residential building, and within the non-residential building, depending on the type of use, they are putting the different thresholds, especially with regards to the exchange rates and the concentration level. I don't think that there are particular type of the ventilations that are described in the regulations, but just the final effect. So what do you need to what kind of maximum levels of the concentration you may keep during the school working hours or office working hours, and how to maintain it.
Just if I can add for school regarding the second part of the questions. So in France, it's very typical from France. It was the beginning of 2019, I guess, if I'm correct. There was a special, there is a necessity, it's mandatory for school not to do IOQ measurements, but at least to look at IOQ topics inside the buildings. So like typically it will start by doing a tour of the facility and have a look at the ventilation system and how, if it works, if it's maintained, and just to start having a look at this topic, but not necessarily do measurements, but just showing that there are something they have in mind and they are working on it. And this is new, and this is for the moment it started with kindergarten, and it is going to be progressively deployed in elementary school, high school, and so on. And this is very specific for schools because we know that the children, the young persons, are more sensitive to indoor air issues.
And both children and the elderly persons, yes, they are spending more time in the indoor environment than the middle-aged people. So yes, it is especially important for these groups. We do have the question whether we know or can recommend some innovative products or technologies to improve indoor air coming from Saint-Gobain Group. We don't want to make a lot of commercial push in here, but what we have already mentioned are some purifying products, so scavenging products like air renew or active air range of the plasterboard products. Some products coming from the wall finishing from Weber and Adfors. But we also need to insist that this is the overall policy of having the low-emitting products and tested products. So this information about quality of the Saint-Gobain products is easily available, and it's always a part of the product datasheets that we have for our products.
And in fact, the French decree, which dates to 2011 for the mandatory labeling, in fact, in Saint-Gobain, we have been working on product emissions since more than that. We started in 2005 on glass wool products, for example. So it was not coming from this decree that we start working on the topic. It's something that has been in our mind for many, many years.
Okay. And I believe it's sort of the last question, asking us whether we will have this live chat available later on for you to come back to it. And well, I'm sorry for not explaining it at the very beginning. Yes, as the previous one, this one will be available on our Multicomfort website, in the competition part of this website. And obviously, there is also the Q&A corner there. So whenever you have any kind of related question, you can always post your question there, and we are trying to answer it as soon as possible. I don't see any new questions coming, so I would like to thank you, Valerie, for introducing this fascinating topic. And I would like to wish all the students the good and effective work on this 2020 edition task. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you for the